Welcome, everybody, to this special meeting of the San Mateo City Council on December 1st. I'm now calling this meeting to order. Can you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Please be seated. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
With pleasure, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Rodriguez is absent this evening due to a conflict. Councilmember Goethals?
Here.
Councilmember Lee?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Pappen?
Here.
Mayor Bonilla?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Couple of announcements. I want to say welcome to everybody, both those who are here in person and those who are remote. We're excited to be here in person at this point with options for those who choose not to be in person to still participate virtually. There are several ways to participate. For those attending in person, complete a yellow speaker request to speak slip and hand it to the clerk. If participating remotely, use the raise your hand feature in Zoom and you will be called on at the appropriate time. If calling in via telephone, press star 9 to raise your hand, and when called upon to speak, press star 6 to unmute. These options for public comment will remain available until I close the public comment period for each specific item. And at this point, I think we only have one item, and here we will begin with the one item on this agenda, which will be a public hearing. Here's the title, 222 East 4th Avenue, the Draeger's Market site. It's a new 5-story retail, office, residential, mixed-use building proposed. And we have Wendy Lau and Manira Sandira.
Yes, good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members, as well as members of the public. I'm Manira Sandira, I'm the planning manager, and I'm accompanied by Wendy Lau, who's the project planner and will be doing the presentation. And we also have staff, including our environmental consultants, as well as public works staff, who are joining via Zoom.
A little louder.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Could we get a little louder there, please?
So I'll turn it over to Wendy to do the presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Bonilla and members of the City Council. The item before you this evening is a public hearing for planning application 2021-071, a development proposal for a retail, office, and residential mixed-use project at 222 East 4th Avenue. The project site is located in downtown San Mateo and is identified by the red outline on the screen. The site is currently occupied by Draeger's Market, which is a 2-story building and includes an underground parking garage. The project site is bounded by 4th Avenue to the north, B Street to the east, 5th Avenue to the south, and Ellsworth Avenue to the west. The project site is primarily surrounded by commercial spaces such as restaurants and stores. A few other smaller grocery stores are also located in the nearby proximity. There are some multifamily residential buildings nearby, such as the 6-story building for the Gramercy and a 10-story building for the Stratford to the south. The site is located in the Central Business District zoning district with a residential mixed-use overlay, where retail, office, and residential uses are allowed. The site is 49,478 square feet, which is equivalent to 1.13 acre. The existing grocery store is approximately 60,965 square feet and is 2 stories in height. On the center of the screen is an image of the project site along the 4th Avenue frontage. To the left, top, and right sides are images of some commercial buildings surrounding the site, which are mostly 1- and 2-story buildings for restaurants and stores. On the bottom is an image of the Gramercy, which is a multifamily residential building for 145 units, directly to the south across 5th Avenue. The project proposes the construction of a 5-story mixed-use building that would be approximately 74 feet in height. The building would have a floor area ratio of 3.1, which is a total floor area of approximately 49,000 square feet. On the ground floor would be a grocery store of 17,000 square feet. On the 2nd through 4th floors would be 104,000 square feet of office use. On the 5th floor would be 10 rental units. There would be 8 one-bedroom units and 2 studio units, all of which would be dedicated to the low-income level, which is 80% of the area median income. The project also includes 221 off-street parking spaces, which would be located in a parking garage on the surface level and extends 2 levels underground. Here is an image of the site plan. In yellow is the retail space for the grocery store, and in gray is the ground floor of the parking garage. The parking garage is accessible from 5th Avenue, and a ramp leads to 2 more floors of parking below. In blue is the ground floor for the office. There are bike storage and trash rooms, as well as an elevator that leads to the 3rd floor of offices above. In pink is the lobby and the elevator to the residences on the 5th floor. Here is an image of the north side of the building fronting 4th Avenue. There are multiple entrances to the ground floor grocery store along the primary frontage. On the upper floors are the office units, which includes an exterior balcony. Behind the glass railing on the 5th floor are the residential units, which are stepped back and not very visible from the pedestrian level. Here is an image of the east elevation of the building fronting South B Street. The entrance to the residential lobby is located towards the center of the site. The garage and shared lobby are located to the left of the ground floor. And here is an image of the south elevation of the building fronting 5th Avenue. The garage entrance is located next to the landscaped wall. Here is an image of the west elevation of the building fronting South Ellsworth Avenue. The outdoor plaza is located to the left of the image, and the entrance to the office lobby is towards the center of the site. There are currently 39 existing trees on the project site, of which 38 are considered protected. The proposed project includes the removal of all trees and would plant 37 new trees. The applicant would also provide a payment to the city's tree planting fund as necessary. The project includes open space throughout the site. On the ground floor is an outdoor plaza at the corner of B Street and Ellsworth, which consists of 1,400 square feet of outdoor space and 2,000 square feet of community open space. There are terraces on the 3rd and 4th floors of the offices, and a roof deck on the 5th floor for the residents. This project was previously considered by the Planning Commission at a study session on September 14, 2021. The Planning Commission had requested the applicant to add more landscaping, including street trees on B Street, adding more housing units, including the addition of 2 and 3 bedroom units, and consider placing the loading zone on Ellsworth instead of B Street. As part of the formal application, the applicant did not change the number of residential units or the bedroom count. However, the applicant included minor design changes and removed the Class 4 bike lane on B Street per City Council direction. The project proposes to retain the Class 3 shared bike route instead and add street trees and living walls. These revised plans were presented to the Planning Commission at a public hearing on November 17th. The Planning Commission voted 3-2 to recommend approval, including 10 residential parking spaces, which staff will discuss in more details later. The project is not subject to the Housing Accountability Act because the housing units constitute less than 2/3 of the total square footage. However, the project is subject to the city's commercial linkage fee because the project proposes over 5,000 square feet of commercial space. The commercial linkage fee is intended for non-residential developments to mitigate their impact on the need for affordable housing in the city. The commercial linkage fee requirement allows developers to either pay a fee or construct low-income units. The applicant had elected to construct the units on site. 8 low-income units are required, and the applicant proposes 10. For the construction of low-income units, the city must approve an affordable housing plan, along with other planning entitlements. For rental units, BMR units must be deed restricted for life of the project. If approved, the project has a condition of approval requiring a below-market rate agreement prior to issuance of a building permit. The BMR agreement includes standard requirements that the low-income units shall have access to all on-site amenities. Staff has interpreted this requirement to mean that the residents should also have equitable access to the parking amenities. The project site has an allowable maximum density of 50 units per acre, which can result in 10 units on the site. Because 100% of the units would be affordable at the low-income level, and the site is located within half a mile of public transit, the project qualifies for relief from zoning code requirements under the state density bonus law. This includes a height increase of 33 feet or 3 stories, unlimited increase in density, 0 residential parking requirements, and 4 concessions and unlimited waivers from development standards. As a result, the project proposes a height increase of 19 feet 3 inches above the 55-foot height limit and requests 1 concession and 5 waivers. The 1 concession request is to reduce the required retail frontage from 75% to 47% along B Street and Ellsworth Avenue. The first waiver request is to increase the maximum bulk standards from 150 feet for the lineal building dimension to 197 feet 6 inches for portions of the building above 55 feet in height. For the diagonal building dimension, the zoning code requires a maximum of 170 feet, and the applicant proposes 256 feet 7 inches. The second waiver request is to increase the distance for the street wall build-to-line standards from a 0-foot setback requirement, as buildings are to be located along the property line, to a 4-foot 6-inch setback instead. This applies to the 4th Avenue, Ellsworth, and B Street frontages in order to provide a larger sidewalk. The third waiver request is to increase the build-to-line exception from 25% to 30% along the Ellsworth Avenue frontage. As mentioned previously, the zoning code requires buildings to be built up to the property line, but allows an exception of 25% when the space will be used for an outdoor plaza. The applicant is requesting an exception of 30% along the Ellsworth Avenue frontages to allow a larger plaza. The fourth waiver request is to increase the maximum floor area ratio from 3.0 to 3.1, which would increase the floor area from 148,434 square feet to 152,533 square feet. The last waiver request is to not provide the required off-street loading space requirement on the private property. Instead, the applicant is proposing the loading zone to be located along the B Street public right-of-way. Staff has evaluated the concession and waiver requests and have not identified any concerns relating to public health or safety or conflicting with state or federal laws in order to deny the requests. A parking demand study was completed for this project, which determined that 208 parking spaces are required for the commercial uses. The project proposes 221 parking spaces, which exceeds the requirement by 13. The project initially did not propose any residential parking spaces as allowed under the state density bonus law. However, by constructing low-income units to satisfy the city's commercial linkage fee requirements, this triggers the city's below-market rate resolution, which requires that BMR units have access to all on-site amenities. Staff will discuss the specific number of residential parking spaces later in this presentation. To analyze the traffic impacts of this project, the city's transportation consultant, Kittleson, prepared a transportation impact analysis. Overall, the TIA determined that the proposed project would generate fewer vehicle trips than the existing conditions. Grocery stores generate more trips than office and residential uses, so even though the proposed project will be larger in terms of total square footage, the total number of trips will be less. The project will also not cause a significant VMT impact, as the project is within 1/2 mile of a high-quality transit area and is located within a low VMT area. The TIA also concluded that the project would not result in any adverse level of service effects, as it would maintain a minimum of level D at all signalized intersections and level E at all unsignalized intersections. To help further reduce overall single occupancy vehicle trips, the project will implement a transportation demand management plan. The trip reduction strategies include Go Pass and Way to Go transit passes, along with other measures. Several entitlements and approvals are required for this project. The first entitlement is a site plan architectural review, or SPAR, for the construction of a new mixed-use building. The project design meets the required findings as it is in scale and harmonious with the character of the neighborhood. The project also requires a site development planning application, or SDPA, for the removal of substantial vegetation, including protected street trees. An approval is also needed for an affordable housing plan for the construction of 10 low-income units to satisfy the city's affordable housing commercial linkage fee requirement. Staff has reviewed the proposed project, and the findings for approval are noted in the resolution in Attachment 1. Per the California Environmental Quality Act, an addendum to the Downtown Area Plan ISM&D and 2030 General Plan EIR has been prepared for this project. The addendum demonstrates that the proposed project would not result in any significant impacts not already considered under the previously certified EIR and ISM&D, nor would there be a substantial increase in the severity of the significant impacts previously disclosed. The implementation of mitigation measures and project conditions of approval, as shown on the slide, would reduce all potential impacts to a less than significant level. A mitigation monitoring and reporting program will be implemented for the project to ensure compliance. Staff has completed public noticing for tonight's meeting in accordance with all public noticing requirements, including noticing neighbors within 1,000 feet of the project site and those on the interested parties list. More than 2,000 residents, businesses, and interested parties have been notified of tonight's meeting. 4 placards have also been placed on the project site. Staff has received approximately 31 public comment letters as of date, most of which express support of maintaining a full-service grocery store. Staff has included a condition of approval prioritizing leasing the retail space to a grocery store and requiring proof of a good faith effort to do so prior to tenanting to another retail use. The proposed grocery store size of 17,000 square feet is consistent with other smaller grocery stores, such as the Draeger's in Los Altos. There were also concerns regarding noise, traffic, and other environmental impacts. The project has been conditioned and includes mitigation measures to offset such impacts. There were also concerns regarding cumulative impacts, such as with traffic impacts. The TIA did analyze 2 scenarios during the project's opening year, which included projected traffic from the approved projects at 480 East 4th Avenue, 406 East 3rd Avenue, and 405 East 4th Avenue. Staff received one comment pointing out an error regarding 5th Avenue being an arterial road. However, staff want to clarify that 5th Avenue at the project site is actually a local road, and that this correction does not affect the environmental analysis. All of the public comments have been forwarded to the City Council. One discussion topic staff wanted to raise tonight is regarding residential parking spaces. Since the construction of below market rate or BMR units are proposed to meet the city's commercial linkage fee requirements, this triggers the city's BMR resolution, which includes providing BMR residents with access to all on-site amenities. The applicant agreed to provide 6 residential parking spaces and none if the municipal code's security closure requirements cannot be met. The city's requirements mandate that residential parking spaces shall be secured and accessible only to residents. However, it does not take into account mixed-use projects that could make parking for residences infeasible. Therefore, staff has built in flexibility into the condition to require these spaces only if the security requirements or an alternative means of compliance can be met. It should be noted that the zoning code requires 15 residential parking spaces, and the project provides 13 extra spaces. After discussion of the hearing, the Plan Commission recommended 10 residential parking spaces to the council, which equates to 1 space for each unit. Staff is requesting the council to discuss and determine the appropriate number of residential spaces, which staff will incorporate as a condition of approval as necessary. Here is the condition of approval as recommended by the Plan Commission and subsequently modified, which states 10 parking spaces instead of 6. This condition was further discussed with the applicant, and additional edits were made to this condition based on their input. However, the applicant would prefer to provide 6 spaces instead of the 10 that were recommended by the commission. The Plan Commission has reviewed this project on November 17th and passed a motion by a 3-2 vote to recommend approval of the project. Tonight, staff recommends that the City Council discuss and specify the appropriate number of residential parking spaces, and based on findings for approval and as conditioned, adopt a resolution to approve the SPAR and SDPA, including specific number of residential parking spaces, approve an affordable housing plan, and adopt an addendum to the EIR and ISM&D under CEQA. This concludes staff's presentation. Staff is available to answer any questions the commission may have. With us tonight are Sue Ellen Atkinson from the Public Works Department, environmental consultants Akoni Danielson and Connor Tutino from David J. Powers, and transportation consultant Damian Stefanakis from Kittleson. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does the council have any questions for the staff? Okay. Nothing right now. At this time, I believe we'll go to the public comment. Is there any member of the public? Yes? Oh, okay. We're not quite ready yet, Lori. Submit your yellow slip, please. Presentation from the applicant.
Yes. I can advance for you.
There's a lot of advancing. Do you want to pass the keyboard over?
We can do it.
All right. Good evening, Mayor Bonilla, Deputy Mayor Pappen, Councilmember Lee, and Councilmember Goethals. Marcus Gilmore with Lane Partners. Thank you for taking the time to attend this special meeting. I'd also like to thank Wendy Manera and the rest of city staff that have worked on this project. We've been partnered for almost 3 years now on this project, and I just want to recognize all the hard work that's gone into this, especially the last 2 months to get us here. So I really appreciate it. Next slide, please. All right, tonight we'll cover project objectives, goals and history of the project information, the design and architecture, and community engagement, and we'll finish up with the conditions of approval discussion that was touched on. Next slide, please. All right, when thinking about the goals of the project, we're transforming an entire city block here, so we've got to be thoughtful about what we're designing and who we're impacting. As we've heard over the past 2.5 years, keeping a grocery store in the downtown is imperative. And we've heard that from the community, and we've designed the project to accommodate that. So that's number one. Number two, we want to provide affordable workforce housing near transit in the downtown. And we're providing more than what's required per code, as Wendy pointed out. Next one. We'd like to design a project that combines the historic architecture of the downtown, but also mixes in some modern features. So this is a project the city can be proud of for generations to come. Really create that bridge between historic and modern. Next slide, or next point, please. Number four, we want to attract businesses to grow and flourish within the downtown. These daytime businesses support the local retailers, which create the fabric of our great downtown. Next one, please. And finally, we want to create a project that improves the public realm through wide sidewalks, curated planting zones, street trees, and a large public plaza. Next slide, please. This is a timeline of the milestones that we've gone through. So we submitted our first pre-app in May of 2020, which puts us at about 31 months into the process, and we're here tonight. We've been through a lot with staff. We spent close to 10 months, I think, designing a loading zone and a bike lane together. That was ultimately removed. But it's just important to show you the steps that our team has gone through to get here tonight. Next slide, please. So we'll go through these quickly. As Wendy pointed this out, the ground floor is 18,000 square feet. That's designed for a grocery store. The office use is around 105,000 square feet, floors 2 through 4, with a roof deck on the 5th floor. And then the workforce housing will be at the 80% AMI level, 8 one-bedrooms, 2 studios, We'll have a dedicated lobby, laundry room, bike parking, and a roof deck for the residents. We're partnering with Alta Housing on the affordable component, and Cheryl Klein, the COO of Alta, is on the line tonight if you have any questions about their partnership with us. And one interesting stat on the housing, I learned that only 25 low-income units were built between 2017 and 2021 in that AMI range. And there's currently a wait list for those units. So that's only 5 per year during that window. Additional information on the housing. So B Street South will be the only private mixed-use project to provide 100% affordable units. It would take 67 market rate units to generate the 10 affordable units. The city requires we provide 8 units or pay the commercial linkage fee. We're providing the 10 at a cost of around $700,000 a door, including land. So around $7 million in value for the units. The project does not seek additional office square footage through the density bonus law. We're just using the height above the 55 feet to provide the roof deck and the units. In other words, we're not taking full advantage of the state law to add more office to the project. Next slide, please. This is a good view of the public plaza, highlighting the various uses and entry points. The grocery store entrance will face 4th Ave. You've got the public plaza on Ellsworth and 4th. The project will fix the awkward one-way Ellsworth condition that exists today, so that will be transformed into a normal two-way street. The office lobby will be on Ellsworth, and as you move up the project, the building sets back to break up the massing and scale, and we've got the decks on top, the residential units, and on the other side is the residential roof deck, which we'll talk about in a minute. Next slide, please. This is the ground floor plane. We can skip this. Wendy covered that. This is the 5th floor. So on page left, you've got the office terrace, the mechanical areas, which, just to point this out, the mechanical area on the roof is pretty robust, given that the grocery store is going to be a full commercial kitchen. So a lot of exhaust, a lot of mechanical equipment, and you've got to throw in the mechanical equipment for the residents and for the office. So it's a very, substantial mechanical penthouse area up on the roof. The units line, I would go back, just want to finish this out. So the units are in blue. There's 10 there. The studios are next to the stairs and the elevator. With on page right, you've got the dedicated residential roof deck. Next slide, please. This is a view of the residential roof deck. The goal here is to create a space for the residents to work, socialize, enjoy the fresh air, the good weather, and views from being up over 60 feet. This is a view from the plaza. We like this shot. We think it does a good job of capturing the potential activity and community engagement in this area. Just want to call out some of the architectural features, the recessed brick panels, the detailing on the horizontal cornice elements as you go up the building. And then we're excited about the wood storefront features to really mix up the material palette on floors 1 and 2. And we think when you combine the steel, the brick, the glass, and the wood, it provides a really interesting design. Next slide. Another view of the building from Ellsworth. Next slide. This is a view of the grocery store entrance on 4th Ave. This is a potential view of the office space. We're excited to announce tonight that we're going to build the project out of mass timber, which is a very sustainable way to build compared to concrete and steel. And so we're excited about this. Depending on when we get the building permit, we could be the first mass timber project in San Mateo. Another view of the cool wood features of the structure. This is a cool slide just to point out a couple of the sustainability features of mass timber. So between Canada and US forests, they produce 117,000 cubic feet of mass timber in 9 minutes. And the energy saved is equivalent to taking 862 cars off the road for a year, and enough energy to operate 431 homes for a year. Next slide. I included this. This is our project in Redwood City. People seem to like this. It's been mentioned in some of the Planning Commission meetings and by members of the public. We have got the same architect and construction team that's doing the B Street South project. So the historic brick that you see here is the same. It'll be a little different color for our project, but the same quality will apply. And then just to finish things out, I'm really proud of the community outreach efforts that this project has engaged in. Our project website has over 4,300 unique visitors and 13,000 page views, almost 400 comments, and Co-Urbanize, the company that we've used to help manage this website, has said this is one of the most active projects that they have in their portfolio, and they do projects all across the country. So just wanted to highlight the outreach efforts we've gone through. And I'll just finish by saying, when it comes to the residential parking discussion that's at hand tonight, you know, our view, our baseline view is that the project is not required to provide any residential parking per the density bonus law, but we're willing to provide some. And so we're willing to work with council and staff tonight to come to a resolution on that. We're willing to provide 6, and if we can get to 10, and it doesn't impact the operations of the project, then we think there's a path to achieve that. So open to discussing that together with you tonight. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions for the applicant from the council? Seeing none, then I guess we'll go to public comment. Madam Clerk?
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're going to ask for you to have delivered your yellow speaker slips to me at this time so that we can know how many speakers we will have. And if you're on the Zoom call, if you could please raise your hand at this time so that we know how many speakers we have in total. And we have a new guideline for council consideration for public speaking. If we have 10 speakers, we'll do to 3 minutes, or we're proposing 3 minutes, up to between 11 and 20 speakers, 2 minutes each, and 20 and over 1 minute each, if that is agreeable.
Sound good to the council? Okay.
Okay, so for members of the public who wish to speak, please now take this moment to raise your hand. I'll give another moment for that to accomplish, and then we'll indicate who is the last speaker and how many hands are raised. And oh, you gave me one. All right. At this time, we have 3 in-person comments and 6 hands raised in the virtual environment. And that's 9, so we will do 3 minutes each. And the last speaker online is Jay Kraft. First, I'm going to call up the in-person speakers. The first speaker is Richard Drager.
Honorable Mayor and City Council members, I just want to let you know that I am strongly in favor of this project. I think it represents a major upgrade to the downtown, and I think it reflects a lot of the current realities of property costs in the downtown. And this gives the grocer the opportunity to shed some of these high costs of operating in downtown San Mateo. Of all of our stores, believe it or not, San Mateo has by far the highest costs of operation. And it has nothing to do with occupancy costs. It has to do with just the cost of being in a city, in an urban environment. But I have worked with Marcus for over 2 years to design a store that represents essentially the same format as our very successful Los Altos store. So this has all of the amenities of our Los Altos store, and in fact, it includes a flex parking setup as well in the garage. So we've designed this for the surges that occur around holidays and weekends. And it's a practical design, and I applaud Lane for including 100% affordable housing units as well. That's one of those things that just doesn't seem to be included in most of these projects. So anyway, I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lori Watnuki. Following Lori Watnuki will be Lori Heater.
Good evening. City Council members, my name is Lori Watanuki, and what we have before us this evening is a Lane Partners project, 105,000 square feet of office, 17,600 square foot grocery, and 10 affordable housing units. We also have a design where the driveway entrance is going to be on Fifth Avenue, and as a result, we will be carrying on Fifth Avenue 41% of that AM peak hour traffic and 50% of the PM peak hour traffic. And those are high percentages. What we're asking for is strong traffic calming measures for Fifth Avenue, which is a 2-lane local street, class 3 bike route, and it's going to be a future bike boulevard. And this is to reduce the commercial cut-through traffic. This is going to be what's called a bypass route, because it's just going to be easier to get to the garage and to get the draggers versus having to struggle and through all the congestion with all these projects. Now, we are not designed for commercial traffic, and what we need are safer streets for the children, the seniors, and the bicyclists, and that's what we're asking for. Many of these projects are going to be developed concurrently, and we've given you a list, but we're asking for traffic calming measures for Fifth Avenue to be included in the conditions of approval. This project is not something that we even knew about, so this is something that we didn't ask for these office projects, but this is what we have and what we're stuck with. Now, the truck traffic route, what we're going to suggest is we need a truck traffic route for all this traffic to take 101 to 92 to El Camino, and to take what's called the state highways to 4th and B, and these trucks will be facing south. So we'd like for them to continue on 9th and then go out El Camino, and to take the state highway routes versus the residential streets. In regards to design, they're going to be using contemporary mass timber materials, and we just ask that you protect the surrounding residential developments. We're concerned with the interior illumination because there's going to be 3 stories of office, and they will be impacted at night, and this mass timber was not covered in the EIR. We'd like to have the glass railing guards also replaced by solid material on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th levels. We'll have 13 large office projects and with not enough workforce housing. And we will have a lot of empty office buildings at night. And what we need is more pedestrian traffic in the evenings.
Oh, I'm sorry, Lori. Can you wrap it up very quickly because your time is up?
I am concerned about the cumulative construction impacts between Draegers and these other projects, and the emergency access, which is a concern, because we have the railroad crossings as well. The project, I feel, should be delayed until we get a better understanding of these cumulative impacts of air quality, traffic,
Lori,
noise, and parking. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the next speaker is Lori Heater.
Sorry, I got so busy writing notes, I missed the time cue there.
Good evening. Mine should be short, so I'll give you a few seconds back on Lori's time. So I'm not going to go through all the comments that I had. I sent about a 10-page letter addressing my concerns with primarily the traffic and the cumulative impacts, as Lori mentioned. What we're looking at is a total of 18 projects that are downtown. And oddly enough, the addendum and the traffic analysis does not address construction traffic. There is no analysis of construction traffic. Now, it's interesting, the noise analysis and the air quality analysis have some scenarios, different scenarios for construction traffic. Construction traffic is going to be one of the biggest issues with this project. I'm not going to address the other issues that I raised in my letter, but I really think the project should not be approved tonight, and that you really need to go back and look at the cumulative impacts for traffic. It's going to be gridlocked downtown because there are just a few routes. I think Lori's idea of using El Camino and the state highways is a good idea, but to me, it's a noticeable defect in the addendum to not address construction traffic when there's going to be huge demolition, and that's going to be several months of the project time. And during that time frame, we know that Block 21 will be constructed, 180 East 3rd will probably be under construction, as well as Talbot's and some of the other 435 East 3rd and 4th. So I really think this project is not ready to be approved because there are serious deficiencies in the traffic analysis. And traffic analysis leads to many other impacts. It's air quality and it's noise and it's the toxic air contaminants. You can't address the full impacts of a project if you're not addressing all the construction and heavy equipment that's on site. The Draegers project was actually way over the threshold for the cancer numbers and even mitigated. It comes very close to the threshold. 9.1 and 10 is the threshold. So I think there's some really compelling reasons to revisit the traffic analysis. I had hoped that would be done after the Planning Commission, but this is a matter of health and safety and the emergency access issues that need to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The next speaker is virtual Steve Siriani. Please unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. I spoke at the planning meeting a while ago. I've lived in the area since 1994, and I've worked downtown for the past 5 years. And I love the downtown. I love the fact that it is catching up to our sister cities. I feel that at least in the past, San Mateo is kind of falling behind its sister cities like Redwood City, who had some big redevelopment and revitalizing its downtown a while ago. And I think San Mateo could really use more buildings like this, which I'm glad to see that they are doing that. I love the fact that this project will provide much needed affordable workforce housing. I like that term used in workforce housing because I run a business that has a large amount of employees that have wages between $19 and $30 an hour up and down the peninsula. And many of them, in fact, most of them come from the East Bay because it's impossible to find affordable housing anywhere on the peninsula. So, Mr. Draeger mentioned it earlier that it's rare to find developers doing this type of building, and I couldn't agree more. I think Lane is a great partner for San Mateo and lucky to have developers like them. Saying that, I'm really happy that they're keeping Draegers. They are an anchor for San Mateo. I frequent that store often and very happy that they work that out with them. Again, I do think there's a lot of, old, tired, and rundown buildings in the area, and I fully support having projects like this. I also love the way it bookends the Trags project at the other end of B Street. I think it's really, the developments that are happening are really going to revitalize our downtown, and that's much needed. People are going everywhere but San Mateo, so I'm glad to see we're doing this. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Dan, and I wanted to mention that our last speaker is Jay Kraft. We had established that at the beginning of the public hearing comment.
Hi, this is Dan. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Good. We can hear you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you first to the council and to the members of the planning committee. I've been following this project very closely ever since it became a public record. I think Steve Siriani, who just spoke before me, made a lot of great points. I'm born and raised in the area, live in San Mateo with my wife and 3 kids today. I'm at Draeger's 3 times a week myself for salads and lunches, and my wife does all of our shopping there. I think first and foremost, having my kids wait outside the grocery store sometimes with me while my wife's inside with no real there, the city plaza, the public plaza that's being built and being contemplated in this project is outstanding. I think it's something much needed for downtown San Mateo. I think the revitalization of downtown San Mateo needs to continue with the developments that, starting with the Trags and now Draeger's, and I think someone mentioned 180 East 3rd. It's really exciting to see, and I'm really proud to be a member and community member of this city, where you guys, the Planning Commission and the council have put kind of the forward-thinking hats on with projects like this. Architecturally, I think it looks fantastic. I'm really excited to see what a mass timber building looks like. Very unique from my understanding, but again, super excited about the progress that we're starting to see in downtown San Mateo. I have nothing much more to say other than, we're very, very happy that Draeger's is staying put. It seems like, Mr. Draeger is fully on board with this, and it's going to be a fantastic revitalized grocery store in downtown San Mateo, with obviously much more utilitarian uses with office upstairs to actually bring customers in and continue to feed, the Ravioli House and some of our amazing other downtown locally owned businesses. So we're just excited. I'm in full support of this project. I think Council and Planning Commission did a fantastic job throughout this entire process, challenging the developer and taking into account a lot of our comments, and seeing this project transform from its initial kind of concept to what it is today has been great. So thank you all. Stay warm, stay dry, and have a wonderful evening. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Rich Hedges, followed by Carlos Valdez, and then Jay Kraft, and that is our last speaker. Go ahead, Rich.
Thanks, Patrice. Chair Bonilla and City Council members, thanks for the opportunity to speak. I was so pleased to see Richard Draeger here tonight. I was a representative for 28 years for the United Food and Commercial Workers Union. I know this company. It's an excellent company, one of the best places for our members to work in San Mateo County. They employ a lot of full-time workers, and they have surface meat counters and fish counters for residents, which you never find in the chains. So I'm heartened to hear that they will be coming back. I want to tell you, this project probably wouldn't work without the grocery store. We lost Trags, and I was on the committee with MTC that set up some of the guidelines for transit-oriented development back in the early 2000s, and only about 25 to 30% of the trips are satisfied by commuting. The largest use of trips is going to the grocery store with any one family, average of about 4 a week. And so without a grocery store, anyone living in a downtown area would have to leave. So by keeping it, we're going to keep down on the trips out of the downtown area to shop for groceries. I would say that I would love to see the AMI for the below market rate units lower than 80% so that grocery workers that work for Draeger's could actually live there. I think it would be very difficult at the 80% level for them to do it. I want to actually recognize Lori Watnugi's comments. I think, especially with the truck routes, just to give you an example, we just negotiated with Longfellow and had a signed agreement absent coming to the city council. And one of that multi agreements was that we set the truck routes. I think the council could do that tonight without delaying this. And I know that demolition is going to be a lot of dust and noise, and any way we can keep down on the dust for the neighbors would be very good. And I know Lori's neighborhood. I actually worked with her with Prometheus in order to get lighting for her neighborhood as a public benefit. So I understand their concerns, and we should recognize them. So having said that, I think I've said enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Carlos Valdez.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, once again, good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Carlos Valdez. I am a field representative for Carpenters Local Union 217. I'm going to talk about something that everyone haven't talked about it. The need of area standards, especially for a project this big, that a lot of our people is going to be working there. And I haven't heard anybody talk about it. So you might ask yourself, what are area standards? Well, area standards is apprenticeship, livable wages, healthcare, and let's talk about apprenticeship. Construction apprenticeship programs are a proven escalator to the middle class, training tens of thousands of California residents every year at no cost to taxpayers. Because of increased wages and lack of student debt, construction apprenticeship can be a better option than a traditional undergraduate program for many young people. Livable wage, the need of a livable wage that allows workers and their families to live in the community they work in. This also means those wages will go back into our community as they spend their earnings. And their tax dollars will keep helping funding our local schools and government. About healthcare, nearly 50% of California construction workers rely on some form of public assistance. And 1 out of 4 construction workers in California lack health insurance. That is 2.5 times the rate for all California workers. So the question is, the question about area standards be made before they approve this project? And keep in mind that by adding area standards to the city pre-qualification language, will show your constituents that you value not just the city, but also the men and women building the city itself. I would very much like to have a real conversation and a valuable conversation with each and every one of you. Once again, my name is Carlos Valdez, and I represent Carpenters Local Union 217. Thanks.
Thank you. And our last speaker is Jay Kraft.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great, thank you. I'll keep this quick. I think a lot of what I was going to touch on has already been said tonight, but thank you for your time, members of the council, the mayor. I've worked in San Mateo for 15 years. I spent a lot of time in the downtown, and I love the downtown. It's a great environment for retailers and businesses and residents, but I do agree with a lot of the sentiment that's been said here today that we've fallen behind some of our sister cities on the peninsula, and I really would encourage the council to approve this project. I think that the Central Business District could really use more and more projects like this to help revitalize the downtown. This project, specifically, I think has been very well designed and thought out, and would be a great addition to the downtown core. Like someone earlier mentioned, this will help really offset the loss of TRAGs. I think that Richard Drager was there in person today to basically commit to being a long-term partner in downtown and be a long-term partner for this project. Speaks volumes. And then on the project itself, the brick facade and the public plaza, really, really well thought out. I think that's going to be a great addition. I love the fact that the developer and the city have worked out a way to fix the awkwardness of the current Ellsworth one-way route between 4th and 5th Avenue. That just seems like a big win for everyone that is downtown on a daily basis and drives in and out of that area. So that's a big win that I think kind of gets overlooked when you look at the project overall. And the mass timber component is really cool. So I'm excited to see that. It'd be awesome to be the first, building in downtown San Mateo or in San Mateo as a whole to have mass timbers involved in the project. It seems like it's very environmentally friendly way to construct a project. So excited to hear that they're looking at that. That's all I have. Thank you for your time, and encourage you guys to approve the project tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That was our last speaker.
Thank you very much. And I will close the public comment period, bring it back to the council, see if we have any clarifying questions now. Yes, one. Yeah.
I just have a quick question. Is it that you cannot enter into what will presumably be Draeger's from the garage? You have to walk outside, and then you would have to head north on B Street to get to the entrance. Is that right?
That is correct. I don't believe there's any public access to Draeger's from the rear of the grocery store. I believe that might be for employees only, but I might also want to ask the applicant what their input is.
Yeah, and following up on that, it is confusing to me as to where the back of the house would be for Draeger's, and how much of the square footage would be used for retail. And so if you could enlighten me on how that, I know you may not know how your tenant's going to set it up, but I'm just curious.
That's part of the design effort with Richard is sorry, I guess I need that. Security is a big concern for any grocer, and so limiting the amount of egress in and out of the store, plus also providing quick access to the parking, we're trying to balance those. So I don't know where it's going to land. To me, it makes sense to have that direct access from the garage into the back of the store, but we haven't landed that yet. So we're still working through the design.
Yeah, I mean, because the way it's set up now, you can be downstairs in the garage, but you can get in an elevator and presumably take your cart down to where you park your car.
What we're looking at now is putting elevators in the floor plan of the grocery store so that you could go directly from checking out into the elevator down into the garage to get to your car and drive out.
Okay, so you're just saying on the floor that's the same as Draeger's, there may not be direct access, but if you go down, you have the option for the elevator.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other council member? Okay. Seeing no questions and having heard public comments, and I guess we are ready. Could you put up the slide that shows what you would like us to cover in our discussions here? Oh, one more question.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, one more question. And in what we'll call the front of the grocery store along 4th Avenue, the curb sort of dips in, and what kind of parking are you expecting there? Is that just going to be solely loading? Will it be that diagonal parking? Will it be parallel parking? Bless you. Any ideas?
Through the mayor, if I could ask Sue Ellen Atkinson from Public Works to speak to that.
Okay. I didn't see her.
Oh, she's on Zoom.
Okay.
Hi, good evening. Sue Ellen Atkinson with Public Works. If you're referring to the 4th Avenue frontage, there will be on-street parking similar to what is existing right now.
So it'll be at a diagonal, right?
I believe so.
Okay, so you have a few spots there too. Okay.
Correct, and they would be part of our paid parking program.
Okay, like kind of what it is now. Thank you.
So who's next? Anybody have any other?
Just a quick clarifying question on the parking. With regards to our recommendation for parking, how many parking spaces are currently designed for the residents? And is there a way to structure the conditions of approval in a way that would allow for the community development director or someone like that to determine what it will actually look like? I want to make sure that if my goal is to make sure that there's as much parking for the residents as possible, but that it's as flexible as possible so that it can be built, if the code gets changed, it can still be built in a way that accommodates the project. How could we do that?
So through the mayor, currently previously the applicant was proposing 0 parking spaces for the residential units. However, since these units are also serving the purpose of meeting the commercial linkage fee requirement, the staff requested that there be some spaces provided for these BMR units. The applicant is proposing 6 spaces. Staff and the Planning Commission recommended 10 spaces, which is 1 space per unit. However, the city, we do have some code requirements that ask for safety gate provisions or safety closure requirements. That's a police department safety issue for residential uses. But that section of the code does not envision mixed-use projects or does not consider, shared parking spaces and things like that. So we felt that it may pose an undue burden if the applicant had to redesign their entire garage to accommodate that safety closure. So we've built flexibility into the condition to say that 10 spaces shall be provided that this code section can be met or an alternative means of compliance can be met with this code section. So staff will actively look at this code section and see if we can update it for mixed-use projects to allow this project to move forward. One option that the council could consider is to look at a parking demand study that's specific to the residential uses that would allow a determination prior to building permit issuance of what the exact number of parking spaces should be for this particular project for residential.
And could that be made not to exceed a certain number?
That is correct.
Okay.
It could say not to exceed like 10, which is what we're currently recommending. But if the parking demand study comes up with a lower number, then certainly that can be accommodated.
But the code currently requires that we basically build this secure parking garage within a parking garage. And if we're saying that because the code doesn't envision mixed-use spaces, the spaces will be closer together. There won't be this enclosure protecting them. So it will be a much more flexible situation, right? The spaces could go back and forth in the future if they needed to. But for now, we could just give direction that the conditions of approval specify 1 for each unit, and we're not requiring the parking garage within a garage. The CDD director or whomever can work with the applicant to make it to accommodate them.
Mm-hmm. Right, and that is what we are recommending. Wendy, if you could pull up the condition slide. So as noted on the slide, this condition was worked upon in conjunction with the Community Development Department, the Public Works Department, as well as the Police Department. So we tried to build in that flexibility.
Great.
If I could, it seems to be a very practical thing to do as well, at least in my mind, because a lot of times a resident may need a space in the off hours when an office dweller, if you will, is not going to be using it. So I don't know if I should be expressing my opinion now, but it definitely seems very logical to me.
Councilmember Lee?
I would just ask if the applicant would come forward and help walk us through if all scenarios have been contemplated and in terms of, just fast forward how this could be interpreted and if we're providing adequate flexibility in the language, or conversely, if we're not being specific enough, and then down the road it could become an issue of interpretation. And so I just wanted to get some feedback in terms of identifying any potential pitfalls.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So we're good with the 10. We're good with providing the 10 stalls, but the question we have in this language is who determines operational infeasibility? Who determines that? And that's a definition question in the future, and that's the concern that we see, is who's going to be the one that determines is it operationally feasible or not. So I don't know how we pin that down tonight, but that's our view.
So the question is, what is the definition of agree?
Right.
Okay.
So, I mean, based on that, I think that it might be worthwhile to kind of further hone the language, and maybe there's a suggestion if we can meet in the middle and require a minimum of 10 dedicated space, or 6 to 10 dedicated spaces, to contemplate and get a fixed minimum, fixed maximum, and then aiming for some code amendments that will better accommodate the mixed use projects like this. I mean, I think that seems to be a very clear agreement that having a security gate behind another security gate seems onerous and potentially operationally infeasible as well. And I think that also, my recollection is that there's a potential conversation around residential parking permit programs that could also be factored into the solutions for meeting those additional 4 spaces. I would be interested in maybe adding in language like that, or like including things like, contemplate, additional parking program benefits or those kinds of things, so that we're narrowing down the potential of confusion down the road.
If I can chime in through the mayor. So first, yes, you can make the condition flexible. And just taking a step back for a moment, I mean, the issue here is the number of reserved spaces, because under the density bonus law, the applicant is not required to provide a specific number of spaces for the residential units. But because these units are being provided in lieu of paying the commercial linkage fee, we can require that those units have access to the garage. And so what we've tried to do is craft this condition to be flexible, while on the one hand acknowledging the applicant is voluntarily agreeing to providing a certain number of spaces. There's also a security gate requirement, and the applicant has to comply with that security gate requirement unless the city and the applicant agree it's operationally infeasible, in which case the underlying requirement to reserve a number of spaces, in that case, you don't need to provide a specific number of spaces if it's operationally infeasible to provide the security gate. So I think the issue now is the number of spaces that the applicant is willing to provide. We've now heard 10 spaces from the applicant, so I think the question now is the applicant agreeable to the condition as written on the slide, understanding that operationally infeasible just requires the city and the applicant to come together and determine what works, which includes the planning department, includes the police department, includes all public works, all affected staff. So perhaps through the mayor, perhaps the applicant will want to speak to whether this condition is acceptable.
Okay, thank you. So that said, I think I'd like to maybe add a little context to the discussion, because I noticed that the applicant is offering, I think, kind of a menu of help for residents to be able to use different kinds of transit, access to a car share program, I believe, some transit passes I thought I saw there. The idea, I think, with downtown, with the train station, I think, just outside of a quarter-mile radius from the building, I think that we've been engaged actively in trying to encourage people to forego automobiles, walk, bike, use other, I mean, the bike lane is a discussion on B Street right now, right? It's a discussion throughout the city right now. So I'd also like to bring up the fact that there is AB 2095, which I think goes into effect on January 1st. And basically, I don't think this project would have to provide any parking. Is that correct?
Well, AB 2097 removes the requirement for many projects within a half mile of transit to provide parking, including residential, commercial, and other. So that goes into effect on January 1st. This project is not subject, or the requirements, the allowances of AB 2097 do not apply to this project. If this project and other projects that are processed after January 1st, they would benefit from that legislation, which provides much greater flexibility allowances when it comes to parking.
Okay.
How much would the commercial linkage fee be?
I'm sorry.
The commercial linkage fee? Is that what
Yes,
you were
through
going
the
to say?
mayor. Yeah, I was about to speak to that as well. So to add to that discussion about parking, so yes, that is correct that if, AB 2097 goes into effect next year, and that would eliminate parking requirements for all kinds of uses that are within proximity to transit. And similarly, in this project, there are density bonus laws that allow for, not allowing for parking, or there are other ways that the parking may not be provided. However, since the applicant is choosing to provide parking for the office and the retail, it's an equity question that should also the residents, which are also a use on the site, have equitable access to that parking, and it's tied to the commercial linkage fee requirement because the units are serving the affordable needs that are generated from that office use. And so by providing equal access to the amenities that are on site, we provide a more equitable standard across the board.
Right. Thank you. So that's why what I'm thinking is that, given all that context, what you just said, the offers of help with transit and everything else that are coming, that this policy is in general, I think, okay, but I think we need to account for the fact that it could be that we end up with tenants in there that don't have cars at all, right? And we could end up with tenants that have 12 cars. And you mentioned flexibility earlier. I'm thinking that maybe what could be is that there could be an agreement that whatever units have cars may have a space up to 10, but potentially 0, right? There don't have to be set aside if residents don't have, if only 5 residents have cars, then why wouldn't that be what has to be allowed, right? But
hopefully they don't each have 10 cars. Hopefully.
Yeah. It looks like.
But it could change. I mean, it's a very fluid situation.
Right.
One tenant today may not have a card.
Right. It'll just have to be looked at with each tenancy.
I see.
I don't know. I see some wheels turning down there with the applicant.
How much would the commercial linkage fee be?
I believe it's north of $2 million, so 2.8 was based on the current fee, somewhere around that range.
And we're building a bunch of parking like 2 blocks away, just on the other side of the tracks. Right?
So you'd rather have the $2 million?
I like $2 million.
I know. I think they'd rather build us the parking.
Okay.
So I'll take the parking.
Yeah, I'm fine with the parking too. But I mean, I want to hear from the applicant. What do you think about what I just proposed?
So before I address that, just to restate, our concern is that in 6 to 8 to 10 months when we pull the building permit, all of staff is turned over and they come to us and say, you can comply with the security gates. We didn't change the code and we've still got this security gate mandate in the code. We think you can't comply with it and now we're forced.
Well, why don't we add in a condition of approval that no security gate shall be required? Can we do that?
So there's a concern there because we can't amend the code requirement through a condition of approval. And the code refers to spaces that serve the residents having a need for a security gate. So I don't think we can amend the code, amend the condition in that way to just completely wipe out compliance with the code. But instead, what we've tried to do is say, if it's a problem to comply with the security gate requirement, then they don't have to reserve the spaces for residential use. So then the code doesn't become an issue at all.
Could we also say that in that instance, then they would pay the commercial linkage fee?
Well, I think it's worthwhile to hear from the applicant and hear what they would like to do.
I mean, it gives clarity because from the applicant's perspective, they're either providing the parking or paying the commercial linkage fee, which seems to be the trade-off. And if this code section and the interpretation of this code section is tying you up, then you can snap your fingers and go the other direction.
And just pay the fee and not provide any parking?
Yes. Does that solve your timing issue and your permits issue? It puts the decision in your hands, but hopefully it doesn't work out that way. Hopefully there's an option where you can build the parking.
I have to think about it. I can't decide. I'd have to just think through it for a few minutes because I'm not thinking.
Let's take a
about
5-minute break and give you a minute to talk.
Okay.
Yeah? Okay.
I mean, is it possible that we put in a minimum of 6 so that we have a guaranteed number of parking spaces that we can work with, and then add some flexibility for getting to the additional 4? And then maybe it's triggering the commercial linkage fee for those additional 4, or maybe it's working with with the flexibility that we're trying to bake into the code amendments that we can't at this point determine, but hopefully we'll be planning towards. So I guess I think that it would be amiss for us to not lock down a minimum of 6, which we know is feasible, and then narrow down the margin of concern to 4 and try to figure out how we can get there.
But you're still concerned with the security gate, right?
Yeah, even with 6, we're going to have to put a garage within a garage, and we may end up losing stalls that detract from the overall project and the downtown. So it's not so much the number of stalls, it's the security gate that's the issue right now. And I'm not sure when it's going to be changed, and who's going to change it, and who's going to agree to change it.
Well, I recognize that. There's a certain leap of faith. I mean, we're taking a leap of faith that Draegers or some variation thereof will come in, and that's not necessarily that we can impose it. So likewise, if there's, city staff in 10 months that doesn't remember, I would venture to guess there'll be other city staff that will remember. So, in any way, I'm asking for that leap of faith.
So do we want to take the 5-minute break? And
Yeah, let's do that. Thanks. Okay, so we're back. And I know there's been a discussion, and I'd like to see if the applicant would like to talk about their thoughts on any of the proposals they heard from us about the parking.
Yeah, we just discussed, and I think we were going to put the language up on the screen.
Through the mayor, if I could add to that, so the applicant felt that perhaps modifying this language to be city manager or designee builds in some more specificity into the condition on who decides whether it's operationally infeasible or not.
Yes. Are we okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
We are good with that.
And you're good with that. So this condition of approval covers the whole parking situation here?
Yes.
Okay, good. Then,
I have just one other clarification. So is this now saying that the 10 spaces will not have to be provided? I'm just...
Through the mayor, so there are two scenarios envisioned in this. So the first is that there is a way to meet the security closure requirement. Either, we update the code and it makes it feasible, or there's an alternative means of complying with the code so that the police department security requirements are met. And in that instance, the applicant has to provide the 10 spaces. The second scenario is that if the city manager or designee find that it's operationally infeasible to do the security closure requirements and meet those code sections, then the applicant is not required to reserve any parking spaces for residents.
So if they're not providing any parking spaces, then they do pay the linkage fee?
That is not built into this because it's an amenity, it's an ask that the applicant is willingly providing these parking spaces. Our resolution, the BMR agreement resolution, is not as specific. It just talks about.
Why am I so confused?
If I can speak to the
Yeah,
mayor.
thank you, Prasanna.
So the commercial linkage fee is connected to not the parking, but the units. So either the applicant pays the commercial linkage fee, and again, this relates to if you develop a commercial project, there's impacts that result in the need for affordable housing, so you have to pay a fee. Or alternatively, the applicant can provide affordable units. So that's what they're doing here. They're providing affordable units. And then the commercial linkage fee requirements say you have to, the units have to comply with the BMR rules, I'll call them. Those BMR rules say access to all on-site amenities, which includes the parking garage. And that's really it. Beyond that, the applicant is voluntarily agreeing to set aside a certain number of spaces. They don't need to, but they're offering to.
but the residents are not excluded from using a parking space there, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. They can park anywhere in the garage.
Nothing is reserved.
Right. I mean, well, if it's determined that compliance with the security gate requirements is operationally infeasible, that just means that there would be no parking spaces specifically reserved for residents. The residents can still access the garage. There just wouldn't be marked spaces for the residents. In all instances, the residents will be able to access the on-site amenity that is the parking garage.
So they still get parking, okay.
Through
Yes.
the mayor, if I could just add to that. So while they might be able to access the garage, the needs of residents is different from the needs of office users, office employees, and retail users who are correct.
Different hours.
So residents need to park overnight, and the reason why this becomes an issue, especially when associated with BMR units, is because typically they don't have jobs that allow for transit use, or there are instances where they may have multiple jobs that that don't align with transit use. And so it becomes a bigger issue, and we have observed instances where downtown parking becomes difficult for residents because our public parking lots do not allow for overnight parking, and so that does become a challenge.
Right. But now we live in a world where having a car and parking are not the only opportunities. So, and the applicant has expressed willingness to help with that too. So,
But the access, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, the access is to the office parking. If you got to park overnight, they'll have access, not reserved, but access to office parking, right?
And I don't, I mean, maybe that's a question for the applicant, that how are they envisioning the garage to function? And perhaps even Public Works can chime in, because there is a condition on, is it a shared parking agreement? Hours that allows for public access to the garage. So perhaps Public Works and applicant can speak to how the garage would function.
I saw that, nights and weekends, right, public parking.
Hi, Sue Ellen Atkinson with Public Works. I can speak briefly to how we operate other shared parking agreements in the downtown. And you're correct, that is nights and weekends, which is typically after the office hours until about 11 o'clock or midnight, and then weekend hours, daytime and evening. So around the clock is not necessarily what's envisioned for the public access agreement, but it does afford public usage of the garage until about midnight.
No. I'm asking about the residents. And if the residents are not going to have caged parking spaces because it's not feasible, is it that those 10 residents can use the office parking at any time?
My understanding is no, that it is limited, because when residents use the parking garage, it triggers the safety gate requirement that currently exists in our code. So the police department will ask for the safety closure.
I thought it was just that we're not reserving spaces, but they are accessible. There's a difference.
So if the tenants, if I'm understanding this correctly, then the tenants wouldn't be able to enter or exit the garage between 11 p.m. and some hour in the morning? If they get in there, they'd be stuck. Otherwise, the police would get an alarm if they tried to leave. Is that the plan we're looking at?
And Mr. Mayor, Christina Horsberger has her hand up.
Okay, thank you, Christina.
Hi, thank you. Good evening. Sorry I'm unable to use my camera tonight. I just wanted to clarify a little bit. There's a lot of back and forth about using the general stalls in the garage for the residents. And the way that the security gate code is structured, it does say that for any parking that serves a residential use, that the security gate is needed. And it puts specifications on those requirements, that exteriors and doors and gates that provide access to the secured areas have to remain locked at all times and shall only be accessible through the use of keys furnished to the residents. And so it does require what was being referred to earlier as a garage within a garage, so to speak. And so in order to be able to provide general access throughout the garage to the residents, without providing that security gate, I think it still does need a code change in order to accomplish that.
So, thank you, Christina. Can you just clarify, are we contemplating a code amendment specifically to address this issue? And what is the timeline for that?
So that's what came up during the Planning Commission meeting and as we've reviewed this project, and it came to our attention pretty strongly that, as came up earlier, this provision doesn't contemplate mixed use, and it doesn't contemplate situations where no parking is required but is desirable, and that security gate may provide a hindrance to getting any residential parking at all. And so we were asked by the Planning Commission to look at that, and we recognize that need to look at it as well. And so over the last couple of weeks, we've been seeing where we can work that into our calendar, and we do intend to prioritize it, to bring it for a study session so that we can get some resolution and direction on that. It's super early, and so we're still talking to PD and everyone at staff level that's involved in that conversation so we can get some workable solutions to present. But I'm thinking first half of 2023 would be ideal.
And so what was it when we were going to get 6 spaces? What was that? How were you going to do that?
6 spaces?
How was that going to happen?
And so if you look at the code language here, or at the condition of approval language, it talks about municipal code sections 2354.030 and 2354.120. So one of those code sections is the one that requires the security gate, and the other one is the one that allows for an alternative means or methods. And that code section is also fairly inflexible. And so we're thinking that since these code sections need amendment in light of the current legislative environment concerning mixed uses and the development that we're seeing, that we would be able to make some amendments to those if you know, council did agree when we brought it forward. And then that could provide some flexibility, which would still get the spaces, but maybe they get some relief from the security gate, depending on those codes, how those codes end up looking when and if they're amended. And if not, then we have the operational and feasibility part, that's the second part. And so either way, it bakes in some kind of flexibility. If the code changes, we have the first part, and if the code doesn't change, then we have the second part.
Could you,
How are you gonna
but
do
where
the
were the
6?
6 going to be?
Well, the 6 can be wherever they're reserved. If the security gate is not required, then it becomes less of an issue.
No, I still don't understand your answer.
So the 6 was just going to be contingent if this future stuff happens?
So that's sort of where we were going. And because we need to do something with that code section, if we're going to be able to get residential parking in that parking garage, it's going to need a gate of some sort. If we want to retain the security gate requirement, it's going to need a gate as specified already if that code section doesn't change.
So, Christina,
And so-
I'm sorry.
Mhm.
What you're saying is actually as close to what my understanding was as anything, which was we're approving this based on the belief that we're going to get designated parking spaces in a shared parking lot that is locked, that will have both the commercial use and the residential use. That's what we want to get.
Right.
But what's in front of me, this language is saying that if the city manager makes this finding, we're not going to get any of the parking, which is my confusion. That is where my confusion is coming from.
So if I could, through the mayor, 6 is what the applicant proposed, 10 is what the city wants. Both of those require an amendment to this condition to allow for the consideration of a mixed-use project. So we still have to change the code, whether it's 6 or whether it's 10. Right?
So we could just change the number 10 to 6 in this, and the rest would remain the same.
My point is that 6 doesn't change. If we go to
Right.
6, it doesn't
Right.
change this condition. If you put a 6 in there versus a 10, it's the rest of the language
Exactly.
is still the same.
Right, yeah.
So I'm going to go back to what my original question was, which was if I want 10 designated spaces, but I want to give as much flexibility to accommodate the applicant, and I think that was my question way back when, what language should I be approving tonight?
This language as amended.
Okay, and so I need to amend this in the conditions of approval, and I need to say that the code will be amended to allow for mixed-use shared parking between residential and commercial uses?
No, the condition cannot mandate, the amendment of a code. I mean, but the condition is, clearly the security gate code requirement is an obstacle. And I think the idea behind this condition is that there's an anticipation that the code has to change to accommodate the provision of residential parking here. So it's more of a something that is anticipated. And then if it turns out that this continues to be an obstacle, then that's something that can be revisited by the appropriate body.
So, sorry.
I think, said a little bit differently, this condition is now worded such that if we don't make this change to the code, it is likely that the the code is such that it becomes operationally infeasible and they no longer have to provide the parking. So then that puts the impetus on staff to make the change to the code, propose the change to the code for city council's consideration. So I think it provides the applicant with an appropriate level of protection, if you will, that they're not going to get into a situation where the current standards apply, and then it provides staff the impetus to make sure that we get that code change completed such that the 10 spaces for the residents can be provided.
So I appreciate your explanation right there, and now I think I have an understanding. Before, I'm glad that we said all of that out loud so that we all have the same understanding. And so if the city council changes the code to allow for this, then we'll get the 10 spaces and you won't have to build extra parking garage within a parking garage. I wanted to make sure that that was all articulated.
So the incentive is for the city to change,
For us
because
to
when
amend
we
our
get an
code,
upside from the developer
We'll
once
get
we...
the spaces in that instance, but in either event, the applicant won't be sitting here worried that they have to do something that's infeasible or won't get to pull their permits. Everybody's cool? All cool.
Okay. Well, I have something else I want to address. Yeah. Okay, good. Go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to sort of switch gears a little bit, because there were some public comments that that raised issues of public health concerns, and then also the impacts of construction in the circulation studies. And so I just wanted to give staff an opportunity to address some of those concerns, because I think it's important that we don't leave those comments and fears hanging and unaddressed.
Yes, through the mayor, I can start and then perhaps ask other staff to chime in as well. So the concerns that were raised were associated with cumulative impacts for traffic in particular, and then also noise and air quality. So I'll just start with traffic briefly. That under CEQA, it no longer looks at trips that are generated, which are associated with either construction or operation. But the CEQA document that we prepared did look at the air quality impacts of those construction traffic that would emit those emissions. And also the city does require, we have standard conditions that require construction management plans prior to issuance of building permit. And we also have conditions of approval that designate haul routes. And in this particular instance, I believe it's 3rd and 4th Streets in US 101 and not 5th Avenue. But I encourage David J. Powers or Sue Ellen to please bolster our response if I missed something. Sue Ellen or Akoni, anything to add?
And I believe Kittleson is also here tonight as well.
Okay.
Hi, this is Sue Ellen Atkinson. I can just add on that there was a full cumulative analysis that was conducted as part of the TIA. So those conditions were looked into, and confirming Manira's comment regarding the haul routes. Fifth Avenue is not a designated truck route as approved by the city, and in compliance with that, the designated haul routes in the conditions of approval do not include Fifth Avenue. We do have Damian Stefanakis from Kittleson and Associates, which prepared the TIA to provide any additional information.
Well, and our staff did indicate that under conditions of approval, a construction management plan has to be submitted, and that will determine where designated truck routes for construction and post-construction will be required to travel, and those are on 3rd and 4th Avenue and not 5th Avenue. And I believe the public comment was more related to the 5th Avenue, which is a local street east of the project site towards Delaware. In terms of the cumulative analysis, Kittleson did review in the traffic study, both a short-term opening year background analysis and a cumulative analysis, which does address traffic projections and accounts for most projects as part of the city's general plan under a cumulative 2040 environment. And those two scenarios did not indicate any additional operational deficiencies associated with the project for level of service and delay at the immediate study locations. As Council indicated, under CEQA, VMT is the measure that is considered for CEQA effects and for air quality, and VMT did not indicate any significant impacts under CEQA for this project.
Okay, thank you. Another question?
Just one more question. I think I was really happy to see the change in the two-way Ellsworth sort of, enhancement, if you will. And I, as a person who frequents downtown very regularly and also drives downtown, I myself have accidentally tried to turn the wrong way onto Ellsworth. And so, I think that would be a great improvement. But I'm just curious. I know that pedestrian safety and surrounding areas has been top of mind. We've had recent pedestrian collisions, and I'm wondering if you can speak to some of the enhancements and improvements that are in the pipeline for that area.
Through the mayor, I'd request Public Works staff to speak to safety, traffic safety.
Hi, this is Sue Ellen Atkinson again. As part of the project plans, the project is proposing curb extensions at Fifth Avenue and Ellsworth. We also were very happy that the two-way modification to Ellsworth was able to be accommodated in the project. And we did want to make sure that that pedestrian crossing was as safe as it could be. So you'll note that there is that curb extension there. And then also the addition of bicycle facilities on Fifth Avenue as proposed in our bike master plan. So there are class 2 bike lanes that are being added to Fifth Avenue. So we do believe that the project has addressed pedestrian and bicycle safety in that location as it relates to the Ellsworth improvement.
Okay. I wanted to also bring up what was raised about concerns in the central neighborhood with that portion of Fifth Avenue, which is between Delaware and 101. And I heard a call by the resident who spoke about needing some traffic calming devices there. But what I found out from one of the applicants, one of the member of the team who was here tonight, was that when the TRAGS project was proposed and being approved, that part of what came about as a result of all of that was that some money was actually provided by the developer for traffic calming improvements on Fifth Avenue. And I don't know whether any project is yet proposed or going to be happening in planning or anything about that. Could somebody address that?
Hi, can you all hear me? Good evening.
Yes.
Azalea Mitch, Public Works Director.
Hi.
Just to clarify regarding traffic calming measures, those are dictated by speeds, vehicle speeds. So we do surveys, and Fifth Avenue, as it stands right now, the speeds average around 25 miles per hour. So they currently, the segments don't currently qualify for traffic calming measures. But we can continue to look at that further. We just have to meet the threshold and the criteria to be able to, address any speed issues. But if they're not there, then they're not warranted.
So question, Azalea, what about cut-through traffic? Is if Fifth Avenue starts getting traffic that belongs on Fourth Avenue, is there any steps that we can take to prevent that?
Yes, so we have done assessments to evaluate that during the peak hours, and that's something that we can continue to monitor. But as it relates to speeds as they currently stand, they don't exceed the thresholds. But we will look into cut-through traffic, specifically as these projects get developed.
Okay, thanks. So then, what else are we supposed to be approving here tonight? Can you put that on the screen? Okay, before we do that, before we get a motion, I have something I want to say, because I know that in hearing about the Planning Commission and the 3-2 approval, I understand that one of the major issues that was brought up was a jobs and housing imbalance. And it's something that we really hear about quite often when housing is being discussed here on the peninsula and in the Bay Area. And I understand that, I understand that a lot of jobs have been and are being created downtown and in many other areas. But at the same time, I also know that we have the long-range general plan that we're working on, which calls for the different study areas, and in some areas we're looking at densities of up to 200 units per acre and heights of up to 10 stories. And so I think the question becomes, yes, some people who work there may not be able to live right downtown, and they may be commuting from some other place, but the city is preparing through our general plan, and we have continued, we've not stopped approving projects with housing, and we expect to have more housing, and we have areas already clearly laid out. We have the all the three transit, the train stop areas. We have proposals that have actually been put forth, opportunities at the Hillsdale Shopping Center, along Amplet, at Bridgepoint Shopping Center, and other areas along El Camino, I believe, where there's robust bus service, there's transit service. So housing, I believe, is going to be coming as a result of completing our general plan and as a result of new state laws like AB 2011, which enables infill development and makes it a lot easier. So I want to try to soothe people's concerns who are concerned about that jobs and housing imbalance, that the housing you might not see being approved or being built right now today, although we do have, if you look at the city's page, what's happening in development, you will see that housing is being built. And housing is projected to come. There are projects that are approved that are not yet underway. In fact, the Hillsdale Terrace project just got their permit renewed for another couple of years, and I think they're intending to come and build those 68 units now. So, and those are market rate and affordable for sale condominiums, which is a rare product. So, that said, I just want to say that. Anybody have a motion?
Yes, I have a motion to approve the project as recommended by staff, where we would adopt the resolution to approve the SPAR and SDPA, including condition of approval number 1 that was just on the screen, and approve the affordable housing plan and adopt an addendum to the EIR and ISMND under CEQA.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, Madam Clerk.
Yes. Councilmember Goethals.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Pappen.
In my last vote, yes.
Councilmember Lee.
Yes.
Mayor Bonilla.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Okay, well, that's that. And I think that concludes our business for tonight. Thank you all very much for being here. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.